Welcome, everyone. This is Coaching in Session. My name is Michael Rearden, and I will be your mindset coach today. And today we're going to be talking about mental health, what our mind is doing in our life, and how we can adjust if we're going on the wrong path. This might seem like a walk in the park. Oh, I can do that in my sleep. This is going to be an easy peasy conversation. But when it comes to the mind, it could be a bit tricky. It could be a bit confusing at times, because you're going against things that might have been what was keeping you afloat. It's almost like you have to tear down the walls and you have to break apart the foundation and start all over. And I always say, when you are a person and you're trying to change your life, and I'm talking about a big change in your life, and typically most people are going to have these big changes or should make these big changes, you're going to feel lost. You're going to feel like, I don't know what's going on in life. And there is a process to go through. Now, the process is going to be unique to everyone else, or to each person. You're going to have your own process. But what we can do is we can talk about our process. And today I'm going to be having on a guest. His name is Jonathan Niziol. He's going to be talking about what he went through, how he got out, and then the mindset that was necessary to be the person and the man that he is today. We all are going to go through hardship in our life, and we get to decide if we stay there or if we don't want to stay here anymore. We want to change our circumstance, our view. That is our life. That is our choice. Some people are going to stay exactly where they are because they feel helpless. Some people feel like nothing is going to change, even if they put in every bit of effort, every ounce of themselves. But they say, if you truly give your best, you never lose. Sometimes in life, we can compare our best to someone else's best, and we can say, well, my best is insignificant to their best. But today I want you to focus not so much on only you, how to change your circumstance, but to look at the path that you're going on in life and to how many people you're going to have an impact on their life. Because if you are a doctor, you're going to be able to heal people. If you are maybe a pastor, you're going to be able to invigorate the spirit in people. If you are a person that is maybe a life coach, you're helping people through the process. Financial planner, you're helping people with their finances to get ready for retirement, to not spend frivolously in life. There can be many things that you can do with your current career. Now I understand you can just be, someone who plays video games. Maybe you bring enjoyment to some people, right? You can watch Twitch and things along those lines. Today, I want you to focus on what you're going to be able to bring to the world, not so much of what you need to do to be the best in the world. That is going to be a conversation for later. Let's get into the interview with my guest, Jonathan, and begin to dive into this mental health that we all should be looking at. Welcome, Jonathan Niziol, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thanks very much for having me, Michael.
Oh, of course. Today, we're going to be talking about your work. You are a mental health advocate. I know you do many other things, but today we're going to be focused on that. Coaching in Session is a podcast where we bring on other professionals in the world that want to bring a different light, make the world a better place. And the work of a mental health advocate is doing just that, helping people with their mindset, their goals, their visions, everything in between that. In your own words, can you tell the world who you are, what you do, and how you help?
Sure. I'm a guy who's been through quite a bit, like we all have. I've dealt with a lot of grief, alcoholism, drug addiction, body dysmorphia issues, eating disorder, a whole laundry list of, and then a number of other things. But at the forefront of that is mental health conditions. And I was diagnosed about 20 years ago with having severe anxiety, clinical depression, panic disorder, and self-harm. And I've come to a place now where I've realized that we have to work together. And like you said, I love you started off with it. I just want to help make the world a better place and help other people, because for so many years I felt like I was alone and I was the only one who was dealing with stuff. So I'm now opening up and realizing that vulnerability is not shame or weakness. Vulnerability is power. And if I can get my story out there and talk to people and share some of the tools that I use to help keep my mental health, and, if it helps just one person, then rock and roll. That's what it's all about. Yeah, that's kind of the brief overview of who I am. And I'm a dog lover. I've got my little dog over there just laying by the door, waiting to go out, but she'll have to wait for a little while. I'm an athlete and just all around, just a regular guy.
All right. And I do want to talk about a couple of things. Talk about the aspect of being a man. I know you said like alone, like you felt alone, depression. And it's not something that only you have experienced. Many men go through this because they have that stigma on them. You know, men don't cry. Men have to be those lone wolves, those lone warriors, and we have to be perfect. And there's a lot of weight on us as men, especially since we have to build up our value. We're born into this world and we have to do or die. And sometimes when we're fighting that battle, we get tired. Sometimes we feel lost. And then what we do is we try to escape. These men, they will seek, drugs, alcohol, and they don't become the person that they can become. Why do you think so many men fall victim to these vices and choose a life that is not prosperous to them, even though they may know it? They just have to overcome those hardships and those obstacles, similar to what you did to live a better life.
Well, I think it's because firsthand, I did that for 15 years because I didn't have the tools. First of all, I thought therapy's for wimps. Be a man, buck up, put your boots on and go to work. And all those other things, it's not macho to talk about, like you're just being a wimp, like all that stuff. I also didn't have the tools to start to looking inward into like our brains can be our biggest asset or our worst enemy. And I didn't have the tools in which to keep it on that side. And it's a lot easier to reach for a bunch of beers and to get wasted and to reach for drugs and that kind of stuff. It's a lot easier to distract yourself and a lot easier to just comfortably numb yourself and just kind of live in that gray area. It's not constructive or productive in the long term. And that's where I finally got to a point after 15 years of doing that, of addiction and alcoholism and stuff like that, where I thought, okay, so I've been trying to do this and it's not working. I need to do something vastly different. Either I graduate to hard drugs, just my life will be over as I know it, or I do something different and it's time to go talk to somebody. And it's time to unpack the boxes of compartmentalized trauma that I had always just kind of put away and focused on whatever my addiction was. But it's like you said, I mean, especially generationally, like with my father, he's a baby boomer and he's very supportive, but he can't relate. He can sympathize with and support, but he can't relate to because he was raised by a generation where it's put your boots on and go. Like you're the provider, you get out there, and that's what it is. So it's kind of been passed down, very much so, like I said, those older generations. And it's a lot of like what's in us, like from caveman times. I mean, it's like it's in our DNA where it's like just put up or shut up. Like it's just go out there and do what you're supposed to do. But like I said before, vulnerability really is power. And when you start like understanding and working on and the tools. I mean, I'll keep saying that word over and over again during a conversation, but it was learning the tools to be a sober, functioning adult for the first time in my life at 35 because I just never had and I reached for those distractions. I think it's a lot of those things. I think it's the stigma. I think it's the shame. I think it's the weakness. I think it's all those things that men deal with that, we know aren't true, but it's in there.
There's a lot there. I like the idea of tools. And I know you said we're going to be talking about tools quite a bit, and you're right. It's almost like we have a workshop in our garage and we're about to get to work and build some shit. But this is important to understand because a tool can be a line of cocaine, a tool can be a six pack, or a tool can be a conversation with a brother, with a friend, with a therapist, a coach, a mentor, someone who wants to see you succeed. And I have a blog, and of course, the blogs that go into podcast episodes also talking about generational mindsets and how like our parents and their parents, they think different. And then how we think is going to be very different. And then we also have that idea in our mind of how we want to be so different from them. And what tends to happen when we have that mindset is we start to go down a path that has not been tread upon, and we feel lost. We feel confused because now there's no guidance. How can people start to find individuals? Because now we have the generational divide that have a like mindset, that are looking for a better life, a better future. And as you said, being vulnerable, but not so much being vulnerable in the sense that you're going to cry all the time, but finding people that you can create a bond with. How do we find that?
So I think one of the things you said that was really important is the generational thing and learning from past generations. I idolized my father growing up. I thought that he's a wonderful role model of what a father and a man should be. I wanted to be just like him. And I had to break away from that when I saw the way that, and he's always been sober. He's never been a smoker. He didn't have those kind of distractions. But I know that he's a very, like we said, very straightforward guy. And I had to break away and do my own thing to realize for what I'm dealing with and with the way the world is now and the way I can handle it. So I needed to veer off and kind of make my own way and have my own ideas of what's going to work. And like I said, he was my idol growing up, but noticing that. And I think those distractions that you mentioned, like grabbing a beer or grabbing drugs, like I don't even think of those as tools. I think of them as just temporary distractions. They're band-aids. They put them on, you put them on, the wound's still underneath. You don't put antiseptic on it. It's still not healing. It's just a very temporary. And then when you come out of that stupor, everything's still there. All your trauma's still there. And then now you've made it worse because I was always like pick a fight with somebody or like not show up somewhere I was supposed to be, like all that kind of stuff. So it just compiled on top of, and really being open to learning and growing. I think that's the most important thing is like understanding that you're not the smartest person in the room and we don't know everything. There's never been a perfect person in the world that's ever walked the face of this earth. And to really embrace that and not hold yourself, like, don't beat yourself down when you make mistakes because we all make mistakes. And like having conversations like this, like I love doing this because I know that there are a lot of things that I'm going to take away from this conversation that I'm going to add to my tools or just, to put ideas into my head and just constantly wanting to have those, to keep learning and keep growing. The moment you think you have it all figured out is the moment you get left in the past. The older we get, I mean, if you talk to me when I was 18, I had all the answers. You need someone like, I got this figured out. Life, easy. As I get older and I'm in my 40s now, it's like, oh, I still have a lot to learn. So I think having that mindset and being open to trying new things. And like you said, whenever somebody asks me about mental health, because I've been very open with this now and talking about it, and a lot of people from my personal life are like, what should I do? First thing I say is, if you have access to, go speak to a mental health professional. I'm not a mental health professional. I can tell you anecdotally the things I've been through and the things that work for me. If you have access, please just go to a professional or start talking to a buddy, start talking to a friend, just start talking and not, instead of holding this weight of like all this stuff and this baggage, and it literally weighs you down. It's like, oh my gosh, like you start to like unload it, some of it. And you're like, man, this is, like I said, vulnerability is, I feel more powerful. I don't feel like weak. I don't feel like I think it's really important to talk and to talk about it with somebody. And that's something that I've learned over the years slowly, but I think it's because of the time in which I was coming up. And like I said, the generational thing, but I think those are important steps. I think those are really important things to remember.
Mm-hmm. At the age of 15, I knew everything. It's even worse than 18.
We had it all figured out. It's like,
exactly. It's the ego. It's so much going on. And typically how a young child grows up is, especially men, is they admire their father, they admonish their father, and then they understand their father. So it goes in that order typically. Now, some people might not have a father, so they don't go through that process of admiring a man. So they just kind of find people that they can relate to, and they say, okay, this person is cool. This person is, someone I can trust. And if they don't have that aspect when they're growing up, it could cause a couple of issues, as we can see in the Black communities with single mothers, and the Black kids are being raised by the gangbangers, and they're going out shooting up people, doing all the things that they're not supposed to be doing. But if they had a strong father figure in the house, they wouldn't be doing that. But then we still have the generational mindset issue where we want to be different, where we want to make a mark. And then we get to that teenage era where we know everything. We have the ego. We're trying to identify who we are. There is difficult to identify yourself as someone who's strong, capable, willing to, go through the gauntlet when we're afraid to fail, because the fear of failure is going to always be there. And it's just something that we grow up into. from, getting grades in schools where we get our F or our D or a C. I don't know if you ever got an F, when you were,
Oh yeah.
I got plenty.
Athletics got me through school. I was just really good at sports, so that got me through for sure. Certain subjects I was good at, but athletics, yeah. But no, you're absolutely right.
And that fear stops a lot of people from doing the hard things later on in life, being humble, right? Being vulnerable to an extent, right? And I do want to get into the conversation because these words are big words, humility and vulnerability. Now, I don't like vulnerability as much as I like humility. Humility, I think, is a more powerful term because it's going to have the more positive notes to it versus if you're vulnerable, meaning that there's going to be an imperfection in you. And again, everything you say to your mindset has some weight, some impact where it could be the smallest thing where, for example, if you're going into a bar to pick up some ladies, all right, let's see if I get lucky tonight. I mean, that's full of negativity, right? This says, I am a guy that can get lucky if I want to. I decide, right? Not, we're just changing the frame a little bit. I do want to create a frame for those two words, humility and vulnerability.
No, I think I was thankfully raised to be very humble and to whenever something would happen, the first thing I'd come home and be like, Dad, you wouldn't believe what so and so did. And he'd be like, okay, what part in this did you play? Look inward before you start pointing the finger. And I learned that, and I learned that from seeing that in him as well, and my mom, and just our family in general, our family structure. And yeah, realizing that, like you said, we are all going to make mistakes. I had resigned to the fact that in my early 30s, okay, I'm going to be a drug addict the rest of my life. That's just it. I'm a failure and I'm a loser. And you look in the mirror. I'm a very polite person. I was raised with manners. I believe, hold doors, open, all that kind of stuff. Like I love, and I would be that person outward because that's who I am. I would look in the mirror though, and I'd say, you are a loser. You are failing. You're doing this and that. So I got to a point where I started to forgive myself and understand better what I'd been through. And, like you said, that understanding that it's not so much failure as it is making mistakes. And I look back at 15 years I spent in that mindset. And I finally, just within the last 12 months, and that's why I've started talking about it on podcasts and being able to talk about it publicly, I've learned how to forgive myself. First of all, I can forgive myself for going down the wrong path with drugs and alcohol and all the things that I decided that were helping me numb the pain, the problem, but not fixing the problem. Okay. Was it the best choice? No. But was I trying? Yeah. I was trying my best with what I had at the time. I didn't have the tool. I didn't know. So I was trying. So I can forgive myself. I can't get the time back. I can't get the money back. I wish I could get the money back, but I can't. And then I can also forgive myself for things that have happened that have been out of my control because that's a part of life. With that true, genuine forgiveness of, yeah, nobody's ever been perfect. Nobody ever will be perfect. And we can learn and keep growing. And, the old adage of, you can't teach a dog new tricks. I mean, yeah, of course you can. We're a couple old dogs and we're learning every day. You absolutely can. So once you, I love how you said that, you start thinking, first of all, with humility, and then understanding that, hey man, we all make mistakes. And just because you made a mistake doesn't mean that that's the end and that's who you are. And that's who you're going to be forever. I think it's an important thing to do it, but it takes a lot of time. And it's just like with my drinking. People are like, hey, maybe you should slow down with drinking. I was like, maybe you should go fly a kite. I was like, I can stop whenever I want to. And I obviously couldn't. And they were right. But I had to come to that determination by myself after getting a really bad case of a severe pancreatitis. But I think that humility is a very important thing. And the thing I love about having been an international model for the last 15 years and traveling around the world, it taught me a lot about so I lived in Cape Town, South Africa, and London, England, and New York, and Miami. And every time I got off of a plane, there were just tens of millions of people trying to live their lives. And it really put into perspective how small a part of this whole thing that I am. I'm a very important part of it, but how small a part of it, and that the world doesn't revolve around us. And we're all just trying to make it through. And we're just you get on the New York subway first thing in the morning, you're crammed in there. It's summer, you're getting sweat on by people. And it's we're all just trying to make it, man. We're all just trying to do our thing. And it really puts into perspective that, yes, love yourself, but don't fall in love with yourself. Don't be in love with yourself. And I think we're seeing a lot of that with social media and stuff where people have crossed the line of loving themselves and then being in love with themselves because they're getting this external validation from people across the world, and their self-worth is based on the number of likes and stuff like that. And again, that's just a long-winded way to say that, like, I love that you said humility, and that was a big learning point for me. Is every time I got off the plane, I'm like, oh, there's a bunch of people here. There's millions of people here too who are just like me. You don't know what they've been through. You don't know, you just don't know. Be humble, show humility, and lead with grace, understanding that, we don't know what people are going through. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic thing you said.
Basically, we are one drop in the ocean and
Dude, just a grain of sand. Yeah, we're just,
a grain of sand on the beach.
yeah, we really are.
And people, when they start to focus on their world so much, they get out of the moment and they're worried about every other thing. They're worried about maybe the latest and the greatest trends, the materialism, right? Or the notoriety, the fame, like or the glam and the glory. All of that is appeasing because we think happiness is going to be there. And sure enough, happiness was always within our reach, but many people, they put happiness at a location that's not next to them. And it's so crazy how we get into this mindset of, I'm going to suffer now and be happy later, or I'm not going to do the things that are beneficial for me because I would rather just maybe do the band-aid stuff, do the easy stuff first. We have to do the hard stuff and we have to pay attention.
Yeah.
And most people, they just don't like paying attention. They don't like to take accountability. They don't like to look at what they have done. Think of it as if someone did something wrong and you confronted the person. Does the person admit to their wrongdoings? And most people today do not. Most people say, oh, this is the reason why I'm late. It was traffic. It was this and that. I mean, I take extreme ownership. If I'm late to something, I was going to say, I guess I didn't leave early enough. It didn't matter that there was a huge accident on the highway. It didn't matter that I got a flat tire. None of that matters. I have to take responsibility. And one of the questions I want to ask you, it might seem like a weird question, but it's not. If you can change the things that you have done in your 30s, would you, or would you keep it?
So I've been asked this question before, actually, and people take it even farther back because my story really starts the day before my 21st birthday. And my mom died very suddenly, very unexpectedly the day before my 21st birthday. And that's what started the alcohol, and everything kind of went from there. And like I said, I spent 15 years. So people say, like, what would you tell yourself as a 21-year-old? Now being Jonathan, being 41, you could go back and tell 21-year-old Jonathan, what would you tell him? And honestly, I wouldn't tell myself not to drink. I wouldn't tell myself to stay away from drugs. I wouldn't tell myself to do anything differently. I would just say to myself, look, it's going to be hard and it's going to take a long time, but just know that you're going to get through it. Because there's so many times where I didn't think I was going to get through it. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do it. But that persistence and that fortitude, and I needed to go through the things that I needed to be the person I am today and learn those lessons. And I'm very proud of the person that I am today. I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't say, like, don't do this and be, watch out for that person and stuff like that. I would do everything the same way. Like I would absolutely, but I would just tell myself, you're going to get through it. And like you said, taking ownership. I love when I'm wrong because it means I learned something new that day. I love, like, the feeling of saying to somebody, oh, I'm sorry, I did not see things from your perspective. Like, thank you for helping me understand from your perspective. And now I've learned something, or whatever it is. It means I've learned something new today. And I think I love that discourse and that communication between people. I've dated some people who yelled, and I'm like, who are you yelling at? Like, my parents don't yell at me. You're not going to yell at me. If you want to have a mature adult conversation, we can do that. But if you're going to yell, like, I wish you the best, this isn't going to work out. I think accepting when you're wrong and owning up to it. And it's so easy with society, it's so easy to think that the world revolves around us. I mean, we call our bank and they say, hey, Mr. Niziol, how are you today? And then you open up your phone and your iPhone is customized just for you. And then, you go to a restaurant, make it your way. And it's like, man, I am the center of the universe. Like, wow, this is really, but it's really important to pull back. And you can see how younger people people in general can get really wrapped up in that. And when it comes to true happiness, like you said, people think that fame, glam, fortune, all that kind of stuff. My mom's from Trinidad, and I remember when I was 13, we went to Trinidad to visit my family there, and they're very poor. They were some of the happiest people I've ever met. When somebody in the village came upon something or did well, everybody got together and celebrated it. And they had nothing. Like it was just, they were shacks, there were whatever. It was like, wow. And then my parents have done very well for themselves. So I've been around a lot of, wealthy people and stuff, and they're miserable. They're absolutely miserable. Like I think Jim Carrey once said, I wish everybody was given $1 million so you can see that it's not going to fix your problems and make everything perfect. Like it's within you today. And it's like you said, it's not tomorrow. It's not like a year from now. I just think that it's a really important lesson. It was a very, very important lesson for me to learn, to see that and to see how that worked and really left a very big impression on me.
When you started off, when you said, when you're 21 and everything had happened, it reminded me of the book, 10 Things to Do When Your Life Falls Apart by Daphne Rose, I believe, is the author. Great book. So if anyone's going through a hard time in their life is basically falling apart, 100% recommend that book. It is going to encompass everything that we have spoken about today in just a neat little package. And it's going to be maybe the first step. And it's a powerful beginning. I always say the book that changed your life is not the book that changed your life. It's always the subsequent amount of books that you read up to it, because you might not like school, for example. You don't like reading, you don't like writing, you don't like math. But then all of a sudden, maybe when you're in a sixth grade, you have a wonderful teacher and they just make you love a subject. Did you never like math or writing or reading? It took something to ignite that desire in you. And it's not only about subjects or about reading, it's about life. We pay attention in life. But sometimes we don't pay attention. It takes sometimes a hurdle, a trauma. People who are doing alcohol, drugs, and things like that, they might need a stroke or they might need a car accident. They need something to shake them awake. And it's the human condition where we wait until, something has gone too far and we can't do that anymore. Otherwise, we're not going to be living, because if we know anything about the brain's job is to conserve energy and to keep us alive. And if you could think about, if you mix those two together, they're not necessarily great for success. Yes, we need to be alive to be successful in a sense, but we are conserving energy doing what? What, sitting on the sofa, doing nothing, just standing still. And we might be doing things that are not beneficial to us, but they make us feel good. And they're not necessarily going against our brain quite yet, because we're not dead yet. And we are getting to relax and we get to stay in comfort. So it's perfect for the brain. But the moment something bad happens, it could be a stroke, heart attack. You said something was happening with your pancreas or something like that.
Acute pancreatitis, yeah.
Yeah, that right there can be that jolt that says, uh-oh, I need to start to pay attention. And that attention is going to be all throughout life, because the moment you stop paying attention at any point, whether you're a millionaire or you're dirt broke, happiness just seems to fade away. Fulfillment seems to go out the window. We can go to places in Africa, the poorest places in the world. We can see kids playing happy, but then we can also see the bad, right? We can see children starving,
Of course.
not really good living conditions. And we can begin to appreciate what we have. But a lot of us, we live in our bubble and we only see what's around us and we only see our problems. When we start to only focus, as we said, going full circle on us, we lose the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that we are just a piece of the puzzle. And we have to look at what is the image we're trying to put together. Some people, they can figure that out very easily, maybe through a passion, maybe through a genius that they have. And people can say, hey, you're really good at this. But most people, they go through life and they don't know what they want to do. They just kind of have no purpose. And my final question for you today is, how would someone find purpose when they feel lost?
That's a great question. I think everything happens for a reason. And whether it's good or bad, it's really important to pay attention to what's happening or what's happened. And if it's something bad, especially, feel your feelings, take your time to grieve or feel whatever it is that you feel. But what's the lesson that I'm going to take from this? What is it going to be like? It is going to be the lesson. And for me, yeah, when I was 25, I had a really bad case of acute pancreatitis, was in the hospital for a month and had to have 5 blood transfusions, almost died twice. And from that, I quit drinking, but I started to appreciate my body better and think, oh, wow, I need to take care of this thing. I'm 25 years old. I thought I was invincible, yet I just spent a month in the hospital. That ignited my passion for fitness because I almost lost it. I almost lost this wonderful machine that we have. And if we're lucky enough to be born healthy, and I know a lot of people deal with a lot of stuff, that ignited my passion for fitness. And that took my life in a very different direction. And then I think it's just very important to recognize and, like I said, pay attention to what lights that fire for you, what ignites that, what, like you said, what people say, like, hey, your kind of eyes light up when you talk about woodworking, like that's, you have a really great knack for that or really great quality, like, those kinds of things. I think it's really important to, like, yeah, I know, but I got to go back to the factory and I got to work. And I understand that there's a part of that where you have to grind and whatever, but there's something there, like maybe there's something there. Maybe, and that's what I did with modeling. I started doing it on the side. I had a regular job and I started doing it on the side. Then I had the opportunity to start doing it full time. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna dive in both feet. Like I really want to do this. And like I said, I'm a big believer. One door closes, another door opens, and really the same way with people. Like people will show you who they are. Just you have to pay attention, and you will show yourself who you are, but you have to pay attention, and you really have to embrace that. And again, I totally understand and respect the people who have to grind it out and they have to go to the factory and they have to put in their 50 hours a week and that stuff like that. I totally understand and respect that 100%. But I think it's important to have hobbies, have passions, make time for yourself, make time for your family, and explore those things that, yeah, make you happy. And perhaps you can turn it into a career and perhaps not. Maybe it's just a nice escape. You go and build a new dresser or something, like whatever. Like I'm not a woodworker. I talk like I am, but it just so happens to be the example that I'm using. I'm like over here, like this guy must be really into woodworking. But I think it's really important to really pay attention. Honestly, I think it's important to really pay attention. And we get so blinders, just through the day to day. Like, okay, wake up, put my boots on, got to go through that. Yeah, okay, next day. And I love the determination and the work ethic of that. But I also think pay attention to what makes you feel happy, and maybe not in a negative way, like doing heroin. I mean, that's a hobby, but probably not the healthiest hobby. Again, I think we really just need to be like more open to paying attention and yeah, just being open to seeing the world and try new things and see what works.
Where's the best place that people can reach out to you or find you to continue to follow your work and see what you're doing in life?
So I love interacting with people. I love doing stuff like this and getting messages from people and learning from them and growing. I'm on Instagram. It's under Jonathan Niziol. Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube are all my name. My website is Jonathan Niziol Official, and so is my Facebook. And yeah, I love to connect with people. I love to, like I said, learn, grow, have conversations with people. I think we all need to come together and help one another. And like the way you started the show, what I always say is I just want to help make the world a better place in any way I can, helping others and doing whatever. So yeah, that's the best way to get a hold of me.
Perfect. And I'll make it easy for everyone. All the links are going to be in the description box below. And I encourage everyone to reach out to him to continue to follow what he's doing in life, because this right here is going to be the testament that we can heal, that we can grow, and we can become a better person. Just because we have one moment in our life that's rocky, it doesn't mean that we can't have smooth sailing later in our life. So I want to thank you so much, Jonathan, for coming on, talking about your work, about your life, and just being that beacon that is going to light the way for so many people.
Thank you so much for having me. And like I said, there's a lot I'm going to take from this conversation that you've said that is really it's going to give me something to think about. And it's going to be added to my arsenal and really help change the way that I see the world. So I really do appreciate it. Thanks, and keep up the good work. This is a wonderful thing you're doing.
All right, everyone. I'd like to thank you so much for watching that interview with Jonathan Niziol and myself. As you can see, when we're looking at our mind, it can take us for some loops. we can be doing this, we can be doing that, we should be doing this, and we ignore good sound advice because what? Maybe we know it all. And in a sense, we do know it all. And I do want to share my experience too, because I believe it's only right to give people the idea of how people change. And I have talked about this on the podcast. This is nothing new, but I haven't talked about it for quite some time. I do want to explain this because my process, it hasn't necessarily been a smooth sailing type of process, right? People can look at my life and they can say, oh, Mike, you have it good. And, like there's no worries for you. But everyone has worries. Everyone has stress. Everyone has concerns. And it might not be in my life. It might be my family. My family's getting older. I'm here in Texas. My family is all over the world, not in Texas. So it's going to be difficult for me to see them frequently. And it's always interesting when you don't see someone for quite some time. They change. They walk a little bit slower. They, don't have as much life in their eyes like they used to because you remember them for when you said goodbye the last time. So if you saw them on Christmas, the vision that you have of them is when you saw them on Christmas, but then when you see them now, you start to see age kicking in. And it's very interesting because what happens in life is when we're young, we want to be older. We want to be able to drive. We want to be able to do the things that we want to do. And then eventually when we're teens, right, this is when we know it all. We forget that as we're growing up, growing older, our parents are growing older too. They're not going to be as lively as they used to, running around, jumping, catching us like when we were kids, chasing us. They're going to be different than what we have seen growing up. And it's okay, right? We grow, we change. But yet some people, they refuse to change. We have to do the hard work. And the story that I want to say is it's a quick one. Because when I was a teenager, think of it 18, 19, 20, around there. I know 20 is not teens, but around that age, I knew it all, right? I still knew it all from me being 15 to now I'm a young adult. I still knew it all. Then when I was going into the real world, I was experimenting. What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be an adult? And I had to go through that process. And it's just so funny because you have friends, you have family, and sometimes they don't say anything because they understand the process of growing up. Sometimes we go down a path and it could be a very short stint, but then it can also be a very long stint. Fortunately for me, it was a very short stint. It was about 6 months of me acting full. And then after I said, this is not the life that I want. But how did I do that so quickly? Because I could have been there for 10, 15, 20 years, a lifetime maybe. I said, no, this is not what I want. The process is simple, but it's difficult. You have to tear down everything you have ever learned and known. Political affiliations, tear it down. Family structures, tear it down. Friends, tear it down. Tear everything down in your life. Start from nothing and build it back piece by piece. That's the process. It is not easy because during the process, you feel lost because the identity that you have created is now no longer there. You have nothing to fall back on. You have gotten rid of everything. Think of it as if you have a house right now, your house is really old. If you tear down your house with all your stuff in it, you don't take anything out of the house, right? You just bulldoze it down. You get some dynamite and you put it right in the center of the foundation. You dig a little bit down, right? And then boom, right? The house is gone. You start from nothing. When you start to build back, are you going to build it back the same way? Most likely not. It's not going to happen. You're not going to have the same things, the same furniture. You're going to change. In our life, we have to be able to readily change. And I'm not asking you to continually tear down your house and tear down your life because the process takes a very long time to repair. It could take months. It could take years. It took me years. I will say during that process, it can be expedited in the sense you get help. As Jonathan was saying, seek a mental health professional. You can get a coach. You can get a mentor. You can get someone that's going to help you along the way to plan to go through the ideas because we all have blind spots in our life. We need to have some direction. For me, it took me quite some time to get a mentor and a coach in my life. I should have did it a lot sooner, but I was trying to do everything myself. And I did a great job. The way I did it was journaling. And journaling is a big aspect in coaching, here in Coaching in Session. I always recommend doing some journaling. How we do it at Reven Concepts, the coaching company, when you journal, you write something down, you keep on writing until you can't write anymore. There's no more thoughts in your head. There's nothing in your mind. You can't write anymore. And it's not because your hand can't move or your fingers can't type, but your mind has finally become empty. That is what you want when you journal. Then there's a rule. You never read what you wrote, ever. You don't read it. Eventually, when you clear your mind from all the junk, all the trash, because typically what tends to come out first is the trash was what we try to get out first. And then toward the end of when all the trash is gone after a couple of weeks, maybe months, depending on how much we got, we start to focus on the good. What type of goals do we want? What type of purpose do we want to create? What does success mean for us? What does fulfillment mean to us? Do we want a family? Do we want all of these materialistic goods? Do they bring us any happiness? Have you tried yet? This right here is going to give us so much better direction than if we just turn on the social media and we're like, oh, this is the latest trend. Let me follow blindly. We have to figure out what works best for us. Sometimes it's going to be trial and error. Sometimes we have to go down that path. And sometimes we go through a situation and we take ownership in it. We become accountable. The moments in my life that have not been the proudest moments of my life, I am still happy that I went through those moments because I wouldn't change them for the world because those moments help influence who I became today. The bad can create good. It doesn't feel good in the beginning, but we learn. And as we learn, we should grow. And if we're not doing those two things, then we need to refocus our mindset. We need to get our mental in alignment with who we are meant to become. And if you need help, get some help, whether it be a therapist, mental health professional, a coach, a mentor, a guide, someone, it could be a friend, family member, to help you along the way. Because if you are going through the darkness right now, if you're on a rough patch of life, it's easier to go with someone else. Because now you have someone who can hold you accountable, someone who can encourage you, and someone who's going to be that biggest cheerleader that's going to help motivate you to do the work every single day. Because that's what it comes down to. Do you want to do the work to change your life, or do you want to stay exactly where you are? Most people, they want good in their life, but most people are unwilling to do the hard work. So today, commit to the hard work. Commit to the change that you seek and do everything in your power to give yourself an opportunity to have the life that you truly want. My name is Michael Rearden. I'm a mindset coach. If you have any questions, email me coachinginsession@gmail.com, and I'll see everyone on the next episode of Coaching in Session. Until then, everyone take care.